I'm back again. Among many things that have been so thoroughly revolutionized in the era of modernity, and by modernism, is education. We hear political leaders such as Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, the ultimate statist, speaking of education as the key. And Lyndon Baines Johnson did the same thing. Jimmy Carter, James L. Carter Jr. did it as well. William Jefferson, Blythe Clinton. I can't do George Walker Bush, but W did it. Education, education, education. No child left behind. As I've explained, the civil state has got no role to play in the establishment of a curriculum or in the mandating of compulsory education. Most people, including most Catholics today, the purpose of education is to prepare oneself for a career, to do something. And it is not. And because Catholic education was even corrupted here in this country, prior to the dawn of the so-called Second Vatican Council, and certainly in its aftermath, I think I've told you, I saw a distinct difference between the time I walked out of 6th grade in St. Aloysius, regrettably, or maybe not so regrettably, just at the beginning of Vatican II. I mean, I look back at it just now, this very moment. I walked out about a week after the beginning of the Second Vatican Council of 6th grade. I just didn't like, unfortunately, the sister I had. I'm sure she meant well. And in 6th grade, transferred to public school, which I thoroughly despised. But having done that, in God's holy providence, having done that, I was preserved from having the faith that I learned through the Baltimore Catechism, with all of its particular problems, but undermined. In '65, I was on 9th grade at Oyster Bay High School going on release time. I think it was a Wednesday afternoon, was it? And I told my parents, I think I've told you this, it's not the same thing. I don't like it. And I quit. Because it just wasn't the same thing. It wasn't the same faith. Catholic education from the beginning of this country has been about materialism, for the most part. At Georgetown College, then later Georgetown University, the faith was compartmentalized. What mattered were the secular studies, so Catholics could move ahead, take their place in the world, as an ultimate end in and of itself for Catholics to arrive. And so that Catholic education wouldn't be ghettoized. That was the whole purpose of the so-called Land O'Lakes Conference that took place in Wisconsin, I believe, in 1967, could have been 66, to various Catholic university college presidents, university and college presidents, discussing how to divest themselves of their official control, but what they believed at that time to be the Catholic Church, in order to emphasize professionalism and career excellence and academic excellence, the higher diversity of faculty, and without regard for whether they believed in the church, believed in the faith, or would teach it, and not even if they would contradict it. We can see what a disaster that has been. Now, it's a subject for a separate talk at a different time. But I've written about it on my site, and others have written about it as well. But as I have written about Catholic so-called education and conciliar structures is a joke. To understand the social reign of Christ the King, and to understand how it's been undermined, we must understand what it is to be truly educated. To be educated according to the mind of the divine Redeemer. And to this end, I want to go over some significant passages with you of Pope Pius XI's Divinae Ilias Magistrae. We've talked now about all of the various secular ideologies. We've talked about liberalism and its offshoots. Conservatism is but an offshoot of liberalism or reaction to it. And all of the naturalism plaguing the world. Everything's a variation, whether it be feminism or environmentalism, evolutionism. It's all a variation of the same themes. And having done this, I want to explain as we move toward the conclusion, near the conclusion of the series, to go over certain passages from Pope Pius XI's encyclical letter on the Christian education of youth, which is commonly called Divinae Ilias Magistrae. It's also known as Representanti in Terra. And some key passages to explain what is the purpose of education, how is it being corrupted today, and what are we who are parents, late in life though I be, later in life though I be, shall I say, what do we do? What do we do to educate our children fully? And if you've got grandchildren, what do you do to help educate your grandchildren? And Pope Pius XI discussed in the Divinae Ilias Magistrae the observation that many people were talking about the importance of education, the importance of education. However, but he said, most of these people have no clue as to what education truly is. He says, many of them, it would seem, have too great an insistence on the etymological meaning of the word. And they pretend to draw education out of human nature itself and evolve it by its own unaided powers. Such easily fall into error, because instead of fixing their gaze on God, first principle and last end of the whole universe, they fall back upon themselves, becoming attached exclusively to passing things of earth, and thus their restlessness will never cease until they direct their attention and their efforts to God who is, as he has revealed himself to us through his true church, the goal of all perfection, according to the profound saying of St. Augustine, "Thou didst create us, O Lord, for thyself, and our heart is restless till it rests in thee." It is therefore, Pope Pius XI noted, as important to make no mistake in education as it is to make no mistake in the pursuit of the last end. We can't make mistakes about how it is we are to be educated, any more about how you can pursue your last end. Can you pursue your last end attached to the Novus Ordo and the counterfeit church of conciliarism when you know you have no priests? When you know the Novus Ordo is an abomination? When you know that the so-called priests who are staging motu masses are themselves not priests? When you know that what Ratzinger and his band of conciliar revolutionaries teach has all been condemned, every single bit of it's been condemned, and you save your soul there? No, you can't. Are there good people in the conciliar structures who don't know any better, or are afraid to find out, afraid to ask the questions, and have the questions answered, and love Our Lady, and praying her rosary without the luminous mysteries? Sure there are. My word, I tried for many years. I'm a sinner. We don't condemn anybody. But we have to make sure that once we know the truth, we must embrace it and make whatever sacrifices, as inconvenient as it may be, as hard as it may be, full of suffering, misunderstanding, that it may be, and estrangement with people you dearly love, from people you dearly love. You must follow the truth and nothing else. Pope Pius XI noted, in fact, since education consists essentially in preparing man for what he must be and for what he must do here below, in order to attain the sublime man for which he was created, it is clear that there can be no true education which is not wholly directed to man's last end. And in the present order of providence, since God has revealed himself to us in the person of his only begotten Son, who alone is the way, the truth, and the life, there can be no ideally perfect education which is not Christian, meaning Catholic education. Everything we do, even if you study mathematics, engineering, you must do everything for the honor and glory of God, as he has revealed himself to us through his true church. From this we see the supreme importance of Christian education, not merely for individuals. And when the popes, true popes, speak of Christianity, Christian education, use the word Christian, they're referring to Catholicism, because there's only one Christianity, Catholicism. From this we see the supreme importance of Christian education, not merely for each individual, but for families and for the whole of human society, whose perfection comes from the perfection of the elements that compose it. From these same principles, the excellence, we may well call it the unsurpassed excellence of the work of Christian education, becomes manifest and clear. For after all, it aims at securing the supreme good, that is God, for the souls of those who are being educated, and the maximum well-being possible here below for human society. The Church, once again, Holy Mother Church, is not unconcerned about human society. She wants the maximum of well-being possible here below for human society. And this it does as efficaciously as man is capable of doing, namely by cooperating with God and the perfecting of individuals and society, inasmuch as education makes upon souls the first, the most powerful, and the lasting impression for life. According to the well-known saying of the wise man, a young man, according to his way, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, good habits can fall by the wayside. As I explained to my students for many decades, as I explained to our dear daughter, good habits are hard to form and easy to break. Bad habits are easy to form and very hard to break. Our Lady's graces. The Church is not opposed to the well-being of society, but she wants the well-being of society as it relates to man's last end. That's what she desires. This is what she strives for. With good reason, Pope Pius XI noted. Did St. John Chrysostom say, what greater work is there than training the mind and forming the habits of the young? Training the mind and forming the habits of the young. Training them to do what? To love sanctity, to love the saints, to give them supernatural reading about the lives of the saints. But nothing discloses to us the supernatural beauty and excellence of the work of Christian education better than the sublime expression of love of our blessed Lord, identifying himself with children. Whosoever shall receive one such child as this in my name receiveth me. Now, he indicated, in order that no mistake be made in this work of utmost importance, and in order to conduct it in the best manner possible, with the help of God's grace, it is necessary to have a clear and definite idea of Christian education in its essential aspects. Who has the mission to educate? Who are the subjects to be educated? What are the necessary accompanying circumstances? What is the end and object proper to Christian education according to God's established order in the economy of his divine providence? And he goes on to say that it is the parents who have the principal obligation to be the educators of their children, not the civil state. The primary end of marriage is the procreation and education of children. That is the primary end of marriage. The procreation and education of children. The civil state has no role to play in this. None whatsoever. The object of education is to form in the individual the perfect Christian man, the perfect Catholic man or woman. To have them strive for excellence as befits redeemed creatures in all that they do here below, in order to please God above, the God who is present with us in the most blessed sacrament, the God who we receive, please God, in the most holy Eucharist, in Holy Communion, the God who is our last end, our first cause and our last end. Pope Pius XI explained how the right of the natural law right of the family to be the principal educators, of the parents to be the principal educators of their children, have been undermined. And he noted, as I've explained to you, the case of Pierce versus Society of Sisters in 1925, which a Supreme Court case which declared, as I've indicated to you, the compulsory education of children in public schools to be unconstitutional. He noted that was caused by the adherents of the Talmud. That law was passed by the adherents of the Talmud and the Masons in Oregon, who desired to close down, to shut down parochial schools because they were teaching things contrary to what the Masons and the Jews wanted taught. Same thing today. Do not teach Catholicism. Catholicism is divisive. It is intolerant. It is bigoted. And the very people who say this are the most bigoted, intolerant people in the world because they don't want to hear Catholic truth. It disturbs their consciences because their natures are made to know, love, and serve God, and they are rebels against Him, and their nature impels them to believe it, but they reject it with hatred as Satan himself rejects it. We're not condemning them. We pray for their conversion. We will them no harm. We will only their good, which is their conversion. But we will their conversion. Time Pope Pius XI wrote this, the natural law right of the parents was under attack in the Soviet Union. This is September 31st, 1929. This encyclical letter was issued. I didn't tell you that. It was December 21st, 1929, a year before Casti Connubii. And about a year and 2.5 months before the issuance of Lit Rendenda Sorgia, Divina Redemptoris, and a year and it was 7.5 years before the issuance of those, and about 4.5 months, 5 months before the issuance of Quadragesimo Anno. So Pope Pius XI was rather busy in this. And even then, even in Western states, he noted the United States of America and Oregon, he noted that case, Pierce versus Society of Sisters. But even then, the natural law right of the parents to educate their children was under attack. He said, history bears witness how, particularly in modern times, the state has violated and does violate rights conferred by God on the family. At the same time, it shows magnificently how the Church has ever protected and defended these rights. A fact proved by the special confidence which the parents have in schools. As we pointed out recently in our letter to the Cardinal Secretary of State, and the family has instinctively understood this to be so. And from the earliest days of Christianity down to our times, fathers and mothers, even those of little or no faith, have been sending or bringing their children in millions to places of education under the direction of the Church, whether it be in the catacombs or whether it be in a field someplace with the local priest in hiding, or whether it be in private homes or the parish or in a school. Parents have been entrusting their children to Holy Mother Church because the Church has a role to play in the education of the children, especially in the development of the child supernaturally. The parents, the church cooperates with the parents in this work of education. It is paternal instinct, Pope Pius XI noted, given by God, that thus turns with confidence to the church, certain of finding in her protection of family rights, thereby illustrating that harmony with which God has ordered all things. The church is indeed conscious of her divine mission to all mankind, and of the obligation which all men have to practice the one true religion. The obligation, Ratzinger, of all men to practice the one true religion, Obama. And therefore she never tires of defending her right and reminding parents of their duty to have all Catholic-born children baptized and brought up as Christians, meaning as Catholics. On the other hand, so jealous is she of the family's inviolable natural right to educate the children that she never consents, save under peculiar circumstances and with special precautions, to baptize the children of infidels or provide for their education against the will of their parents, till such time as the children can choose for themselves and freely embrace the faith. Because the purpose of Catholic education is not to prepare people to be able to read, write, whatever. It is to prepare them for eternity. And they must realize that everything they study relates to their first cause and last end. And he said, whoever refuses, he went on later in his encyclical to say, whoever refuses to admit these principles and believes the state is the primary educator of children and has to apply them to education must necessarily deny that Christ has founded his church for the eternal salvation of mankind, and maintain instead that civil society and the state are not subject to God and his law, natural and divine. Such a doctrine is manifestly impious, contrary to right reason, and especially in this matter of education, extremely harmful to the proper training of youth, and disastrous as well for civil society as well as for the well-being of all mankind. Pardon me, I am very tired. And I had one of my patented clumsy accidents the other day. Was it 2 days ago, Monday, the 14th? I was putting dry cleaning in the car, opened the lid of the car that we had at that time, our Honda Accord, mercifully went bye-bye because I didn't like it. It was a miracle that we got a new car, but we got a used van, which is better for our purposes. And it was miraculous because, we don't have money. And so we just are financed until the end of the world. But that's the way that is. But better the Lord. Paying $4 less a month for a car payment now. That's nice with a nicer car. And in this Honda Accord that we had, I smashed the thing. I thought I was clear of the hood, right? The lid, trunk lid. I smashed it down on top of my head. I mean, I smashed. I'm an idiot, all right? I'm an idiot. I'm a fool. I smashed it down, all right? Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I love you, save souls. All to thee, blessed Mother, all to thy sorrowful and immaculate heart. So I didn't see stars, but there's something of cloudiness here. I'm pleased with the way these programs are going today, but oh, I am tired. So please forgive my voice in this regard. And so we see the harmful effects of civil instruction today. I mean, billions of dollars spent in education today. Children are less educated today. Not only about first and last thing, they can't read. They can't write. They're slaves of these handheld devices, these horrible satanic video games, which have no right to exist, by the way. Freedom of speech. No. No one has the right to produce those. Sorry about that. They're from the devil. They're all part of satanic activity, folks. And which have gone into these recent shootings, Satanism, worship of the devil, overtly manifesting it. The civil state has desired to create slaves, incompetent, illiterate, uneducated slaves who have degrees, who are told they're trained, but they're trained in nothing. They're trained to be good slaves to the state. Pope Pius XI went on to note by contrast, on the other hand, from the application of these principles, there inevitably result immense advantages for the right formation of citizens if you adhere to the teaching of the Church. This is abundantly proved by the history of every age. Tertullian, in his Apologeticus, could throw down a challenge to the enemies of the Church in the early days of Christianity, just as St. Augustine did in his, and today we can repeat with him. So this is Pope Pius XI quoting St. Augustine. Let those who declare the teaching of Christ to be opposed to the welfare of the state furnish us with an army of soldiers, such as Christ says soldiers ought to be. Let them give us subjects, husbands, wives, parents, children, masters, servants, kings, judges, taxpayers, and tax gatherers who live up to the teaching of Christ, and let them dare assert that Christian doctrine is harmful to the state. Rather, let them not hesitate one moment to acclaim that doctrine rightly observed, that doctrine rightly observed is the greatest safeguard to the state. What is the greatest safeguard to the state? Catholic education. Period. And Pope Pius XI went on to say, while treating of education, it is not out of place to show here how an ecclesiastical writer who flourished in more recent times, during the Renaissance, that is more recent than St. Augustine, the holy and learned Cardinal Silvio Ottoniano, to whom the cause of Christian education is greatly indebted, has set forth most clearly in this well-established point of Catholic doctrine. He had been a disciple of a wonderful educator of youth, St. Philip Neri. St. Philip Neri, the saint of such joy. St. Philip Neri was trying to give a tennis lesson, indoor tennis lesson, and he had a tennis racket, and he was trying to show him the backswing, how you swing the tennis racket, and he swung the tennis racket with the backhand and backed up, and he knocked over a vase full of water pitcher, and he said, "Never let it be said, Father Philip." He said, "Father Philip gets results." He had a very good self-effacing sense of humor, and I've had the privilege of praying at his altar at the Chiesa Novo on the Via Nazionale, not far from the Tiber River, near the Via della Conciliazione, near the Vatican. It's a walk. I mean, it's a walk to get there, but I've always stopped there to pray at his tomb, at his altar where his sarcophagus is. He was teacher and Latin secretary to St. Charles Borromeo, and it was at the latter's suggestion and under his inspiration that he wrote his splendid treatise on the Christian education of youth. In it, he argues as follows. This is Cardinal Ottoniano. Now, I've read this to you before in the context of the election series that I did, but again, now in the context of living in the shadow of the cross, explaining how far we are today from understanding things in light of the shadow of the cross. The more closely the temporal power of a nation aligns itself with the spiritual, and the more it fosters and promotes the latter, by so much the more it contributes to the conservation of the Commonwealth. For it is the aim of the ecclesiastical authority, by the use of spiritual means, to form good Christians in accordance with its own particular end and object, and in doing this it helps at the same time to form good citizens, and prepares them to meet their obligations as members of a civil society. What forms good citizens? Catholic education, truly Catholic education. This follows of necessity, because in the city of God, the Holy Roman Catholic Church, a good citizen and an upright man are absolutely one and the same thing. How grave, therefore, is the error of those who separate things so closely united, and who think that they can produce good citizens by ways and methods other than those which make for the formation of good citizens. Oh yes, Obama, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, they could all produce, Richard Nixon, all produce ways, Reagan even, all produce, George Herbert Walker Bush certainly, all produce good citizens by ways and methods other than those which make for the formation of good Christians, meaning good Catholics. This is Cardinal Ottoniano in the 16th century. For let human prudence say what it likes and reason as it pleases. it is impossible to produce.